I really would like to position this antenna after the case is assembled. And we've essentially done this step because I have the jack here. At this point, we're only on page 8 of the instructions. They don't tell us much, but step 14 is install the mating half of the display. What they mean is, we have this 1602 display. The 16 is the number of characters, and the 02 is its 2 lines. It has a series of holes here. These are mounting holes. This piece of header material mates with this piece. And it's too long. So I'm going to trim it. So it mates with it there, and you can see it's too long. Where can you see that? There are little notches here. If I just get in between it and cut it on the appropriate notch, that'll be the appropriate notch. See, that installs like that. And this installs on that. See, it was necessary to cut the other pins off. Otherwise, they would have gone extended out here or here. Now, once this is cut to length, we install it from the bottom like this, with the long pins extending downward. Again, I'm going to solder one pin and look at it. Appears to be leaning, so I'll straighten it out. That appears to be straight, or straighter. So it's a matter of running along this. Well, it doesn't, there's a gap missing here between step 14 and 15. Maybe I'll add some text up here, because we've got to install the integrated circuits into the sockets. Now the ICs are somewhere. Here are the ICs. The pins are bent and splayed outward a little bit. I have this tool. You can bend them with pliers or on the bench by pressing down on it like this and rolling it a little bit. But I have this little tool. Put them in there like that and close that up. What that does is it makes them sort of straight up and down compared to the body. Now this is the audio amplifier. It's polarized. It has a notch at one end that goes to the notch on the silk screening, which should be the notch also on the socket. Now it's fairly easy to install the 8-pin. There's, after all, only 8 pins. This has a lot more pins. And this is the microprocessor. You can see again the legs are sort of splayed out. They need to be more parallel and at right angles to the body of the device. Using the tool, I just put it in and squeeze it, and then magically the legs come out. Where they should be. I can't overemphasize the importance of getting these pins to fit the first time. And there we go. The next thing we have to do before we test it is plug this, is to mate these headers together. Now I believe it can be tested. Through the magic of editing, I've jumped ahead in time. See, I've put these little brass standoffs on, which I was supposed to do later on. But I wanted to put the case partially on to see where I could locate the antenna. The antennas, they don't provide this screw. This is an M2 screw, and the antenna is actually tapped for the M2 screw. So what I intend to do is put the M2 screw through the hole from the front of the board and bring the antenna up behind it. You want this piece to be parallel to the side, not leaning left or right. Now, the reason I'm going to use the screw is to hold it in place while I solder it. In fact, I'm going to actually go ahead and see if I can put a nut on it. My fingers will contain a nut long enough to put it on there. See, if I put a clamp on here, like a pair of forceps or something, that just adds a lot of mass. Will help it be as a heat sink while we try to get this hot enough to solder it. Now the heat takes nice to the pad, but the antenna itself is going to take. See, now the nut's loose. I'm going to connect the speaker with this JST header. The kit would have you connected with this red and black wire. Now make sure there's no loose wires or little parts in your bench like these. They'll get attracted to the speaker. Before we put the case on, we should test it. Now this switch merely turns off these VU indicators, and they just track with the volume control anyway. Well, now that we know the radio works, we put it in the case. Well, this one turns it off. Now, I noticed that it does not remember the settings. There seems to be a default setting here. And that's really a shame. I've unpacked the hardware and I've unpacked the plastic that will be used to form the case. We've got 5 6mm screws. Well, first of all, they're all 3mm diameter. These are 3x6, 3x8, and 3x10. There's 5 of these and 5 of these, and 5 brass standoffs. So I think we have some extra hardware, at least 1 extra standoff. I pulled up one corner of a side, and by carefully working my way around, paper will come off. Take the other side, peel the corner up. Now, it's going to tear at some point, or maybe it won't. So I think this is the rear piece. It's symmetrical all around either way. And it tells me to mount the speaker with the wires off to one of the long sides rather than short side. And these are too short. It looks like these are could be too long. I may regret this, but I'm going to use one of these 8mm screws. These are all Phillips head screws. So the speaker is just exposed. I can touch the diaphragm. And you see these screws are more than long enough. They're sticking through the nut. For now, I'm only going to install 2 of them in the event that they intend for me to use these screws. Whichever screws I use, I'll note them on the drawing. But that's step 1. Second step is to remove this display and put these brass standoffs, 4 of them, in these holes. So I'm going to take one of these 6mm screws and mount the I haven't read the instructions, but I imagine once the standoffs are installed, reinstall the display. Looks as if this piece fits on here. See, it's got a cutout here so that it doesn't hit the solder terminals. Well, this would be a good time to take off the protective shield. Then this piece fits on top of it. And that's where we're going to use the long screws. It's very difficult to pull this down completely tight on the standoffs. I hate to think what I'm crushing underneath here. Alright, so I guess we have 2 screws left over and 1 standoff, I hope. So I took a little break there to install the antenna, and I attached the side. See how those joints are made? There's a screw from the top into a nut. The nut fits into loosely into that opening. Looks like this. So you have to hold this thing vertical and slide the nut in. Don't put it this way and slide the nut in. The nut will fall in, and then you'll have it rattling around inside. Slide the nut in very carefully. Drop an 8mm long screw. You won't need a wrench. The nut will not rotate because the slot is too small. So the nut is captive like that, and it won't rotate. It will fall out very easily inside the radio. So I'll notate what the dimensions of all these screws are. Now it wants me to fasten the back on, which will contain the speaker. I guess I'll use 2 more of the 8mm bolts for the speaker. Now do you understand why I use the JST connector? So I can plug and unplug the speaker. Otherwise, during the fabrication of this case, the speaker would be dragging around. This way I can just go ahead and plug the speaker in once the case is assembled, or at least during case assembly. That way I can plug the speaker in and then proceed with the case assembly. So there's the speaker antenna side cover, and that's what's shown here is the side cover and the back, which has the speaker. That takes us to page 12. Then it just says proceed to install all the rest of the covers. This side plate has no fastening here at the top, so it's designed to go like this. Fastens at the bottom. And at the sides. Well, here we are all buttoned up, and not a single not a single nut inside. Nice thing if you get one in there and you can't get it out, just shake it around and the magnet will collect it. I built 2 of these. I have the same problem with both of them. The volume will go up and down. The lights will respond to the volume control. And these are volume up and down. They really intuitively should be located under this volume setting. That's not a problem. This is frequency up, frequency down. Am I at a new frequency or? Again, is that a different frequency or just? Well, sometimes it will pick a new frequency. Here went back to 90. And both radios have the same problem. Now I've measured the 2 pins that are controlled by these 2 buttons on the IC, and it does pull them down every time they're pressed, so there's nothing wrong with the circuitry. And I verified that on the pin itself. And both radios operate exactly the same way, although not the same frequencies. It does not remember the last setting. I've interchanged ICs. I've measured both devices to verify that these push buttons were communicating with the chip. The up-down volume pins on the chip measure exactly the same as the up-down frequency, so they're getting the same signal. They're different, 4 different pins, but I guess that's what it means when he says this down at the last page. So I will put the additional notes on these drawings. I'll upload them to a subdirectory to be linked below. Has anybody made this radio that actually works? I'd like to know. Well, thank you.